check. To the naked eye, he looked offside, but when the check was made, he was on. The celebrations delayed, but they certainly weren't muted for long. And then with 6 minutes to go, Johnson released on the right and firing in beyond Danny Ward to secure those 3 points. Leicester can certainly point to some glorious opportunities. Both came the way of Harvey Barnes, one in the first half after a brilliant delivery from Mark Albright, and that was why then Tillemans found Barnes in space left of the penalty area early in the second half, but he shot off target, and it was there where Forest went on to get their 2 goals to seal a victory here at the City Ground. Matt Elliott watching on this afternoon, and as we watch the Forest celebrations, how do you sum up the Leicester performance this afternoon?
There's not too much positivity out there really. I thought every player, bar Wout Faes, was suffering a bit out there with a lack of confidence. And on the performances themselves, there was a little bit of a lack of character as well. A lack of personality, you know, they had to sort of stamp their authority on that game. Struggled, and without being disrespectful, I don't think Forest were particularly impressive or amazing to watch in terms of their football. A few moments here and there, but the few bits of quality that were shown came from players in red shirts. The extra determination, the robustness in the challenge, the aggression out there was pretty much all coming from the home team. I know Leicester are short on confidence, etc., but it needs some personalities to stand up and drive the other players on and forward, not feel sorry for themselves. And that was, for the magnitude of the game, for the size of the game, all things considered, what it meant, local rivals, that was pretty timid from Leicester, you have to say. They're not naturally a physical, aggressive team as a whole. You don't have to be 6'5", built like Desperate Dan, to go out there and make an impact. You know, it's a mentality thing, and Leicester are short in a lot of departments right now. Jamie Vardy's on the periphery, and even so, they still had their chance. But listen, they didn't work the goalkeeper anywhere near enough, did they? But hardly at all. I'm trying to sort of squeeze positives or bring some positives up out of that display, but Forest weren't in great shapes themselves, but they still won the game relatively comfortably in the end, and deservedly so. And that's a sad indictment on Leicester's performance.
Some Leicester fans remained. It will be tough for them to watch these celebrations. It will be tough for quite some time now when they meet up with their Nottingham Forest supporting friends. One last job before we bring in the team back at base. Matt is your Leicester man of the match. You may have given us a hint there with your summary.
Yeah, and it was more a case of who played least bad, really, or least ineffectively. Wout Faes, for me, I thought, solid, steady game. And from memory, I can't remember any glaring mistakes that he does sometimes drop in, but at least he had a determination, a ruggedness about himself. You know, a little bit roll the sleeves up, come on boys. He was trying his best to marshal the troops around him. It wasn't enough. It was a valiant effort from him at the least. Didn't see that from too many other players.
From the City Ground we head back to the studio back at King Power Stadium, but full time here it's Nottingham Forest 2, Leicester City 0.
Thanks, John. Bitterly disappointing afternoon there from the City Ground. Thanks to John Dunn on commentary there. Walshy, you obviously always wear your heart on your sleeve, don't you? And that has been a really tough afternoon. Yeah, it hurts. It hurts watching all the celebrations from Forest players, fans. You know, I've been there before in games like this, but Leicester certainly, that second half. I mean, that game was there for the taking, like we said at half time, but that was awful. There was alarm bells for me We lost it in midfield today. You know, many a time Forest were just running at that back four, nobody in sight. You know, we've got 2 holding midfield players playing in that game, and they were nowhere to be seen. It was incredible. A lack of quality in that second half. Low confidence. You can see that you know, everybody can see that, obviously, through the results that we've had recently. But, you know, for me, there was no real leader on that pitch at all. I've said it before. You know, people have got to stand up now and be counted. And this can't go on. It's you know, like I said, it's all right having technically good players, but we spoke about the physicality side of it. That is important in any game, especially away from home and a local rival team like Forest. You know, you've almost, you know, them old, you know, cliches from years ago. You've got to win the battle, kind of thing. That we didn't even lay a glove on Forest at all, and things that are so just incredible day for Leicester City, and the fact that where do we go from here? How do we change things? You know, we certainly we were getting balls into the box. There was no anticipation at times, you know, and we had a couple of decent chances to stamp our authority and get that first goal. You know, if we'd have got that, maybe would that have changed the concept of the game? I don't really know. But there were silly errors from us, lack of desire, and an all-round, really, second half poor display.
Jerry, how do you sum up what you've seen?
Well, I can't really add much to what Walshy said, to be honest. Dan, we said before the game, or I said before the game, that the player's character would be called into question, and sadly, as Walshy has just explained, especially in that second half, he spoke at half-time about lifting it, because Forest would have to lift it, because essentially they were bang average, but were working hard. But as far as, you know, tactical nice and technical nice, they were pretty average. And some of the things I saw in the second half from some of the Leicester players, I'm scratching my head thinking, what are they trying to achieve here? And in the end, you know, that character wasn't able to stand up to the togetherness that Forest showed as a team. You know, what she's saying, both central midfielders, holding midfielders, are on the edge of their box at one stage. And Forrest had his own counter-attack and probably should have done better. I mean, where's the leadership? We could sit here for as long as you want, Dan, and talk about what's not right or what's missing. But some of the basics in the game, they should not be getting wrong. And all too often, that's what I see. The basics of football, playing a game of football and managing a game of football, we're missing.
And how is that solved, Jerry?
Well, it's been missing for a while. You know, Leicester haven't won a game apart from against the League Two side in the FA Cup. So they've lost 5 games against 5 Premier League sides, 4 in the league, 1 in the cup, in the League Cup. Don't ask me, basically, because I don't know. We can go back to the injured players, but I said you can't make excuses for that. There's enough experience out in the pitch just to grind out a result, give Forest nothing. And unfortunately, Leicester weren't able to do that yet again.
Matt, there would have been, a couple of thousand Leicester City fans that were there in that away end. Obviously, a really tough watch for them, a really tough watch for you in person there today. One that will probably take a bit of getting over, I think.
Yeah, I think, although it wasn't sort of as dramatic a collapse as there was in the FA Cup game here last season, it's almost more damaging, isn't it? It's more hurtful, really. The scoreline is only half as bad in terms of conceding 2 goals. But the importance of it you know, this at this stage of the season, how things have developed, and you know how much was riding on this game really, because Leicester have got a real uphill struggle now, in the short term at the very least, haven't they? Because of those fixture lists that I mentioned before that they've got coming up. They've got some tough games coming up. We've got Brighton next week, who've just beaten Liverpool 3-0. That's an even more difficult game than it was 2 hours ago now. Aston Villa, you know what they're bringing, then 3 of the top sides in the country to face, and it looks quite a daunting prospect if you look at it like. I don't, you know, it really is going to test players' character that Jerry just spoke about. But if you can't stand up to the test here at the City Ground, you don't hold out too much hope going forward. But we know football can be, you know, so cranky and quirky that Leicester could turn it round. But at the moment, you know, I'm sort of clutching at straws, thinking that, even trying to suggest that right now, because it was weak, wasn't it? And it looked a little bit stale, you have to say. And I know, you know, there'll be reasons for that. A little bit threadbare on in terms of the squad, and there's issues left, right, and centre that you can look at that need addressing and need changing, need correcting, need improving. But then you can't let it drag you under, and it feels like the situation is, if it's not dragging some of the players, it's certainly sort of tugging at their ankles a bit, because they're just not playing the natural game that they are capable of individually, collectively. I think some players out there, you're not expecting them to be world beaters and game changers, but some of the players out there, you know what they are capable of. All of a sudden, they're not showing it, they're not providing it, they're going within themselves a little bit. Once that starts happening, you've just asked Jerry the question, and Jerry's as good as most in terms of motivation as a player and getting people on their game. He couldn't come up with the answer. If he can't, it's not an easy solution.
Can you?
Well, I mean, if we'd have played anybody else than Forest today, it could have been a lot more today. That's the worrying thing for me. That, you know, there was a warning sign in that second half, you know, before Johnson scored his first goal, you know, with Ndidi and Mendy being cut out, and just there was 50, 60 yards that Forest were running at that back four, no one in sight. That was the warning sign. And then it came. And it was a similar situation, broke right through the middle and opened the gates, and it was incredible. That should never be happening, you know, in the discipline and shape of this team. They understand what their role in the team is, but you know, what is going on there? You know, I looked at the second half late on. There was a corner. There was 10 players we had inside the box. We still had that mismatch earlier in the first half with Thomas marking Yates. I thought that was wrong anyway. But these are little things, I know. But you know, when you're 2-0 down and we're playing sideways and backwards, I watched it, and we've got 3 minutes left on the clock. You know, you've got to look, you know, as a centre back, to get that ball out your feet and get it over the top or into the back four and try and squeeze the midfield to pick up the bits if it comes back. You're desperate situation. You need a goal back. We ain't going to do that by, you know, and we wasted 2 or 3 minutes, and that's all we had left. I'm just mystified by some of the things that I'm seeing, you know, and. You know, like, there's no magic wand that's going to change this, but we're maybe not as good as we all think we are. But look, there's been below par performances for a little while. The Maddison situation, it keeps, you know, he's just a key cog in the whole machinery of what goes on inside this football club for me. And you know, we don't know what's happening with him, how long he's going to be. You know, hopefully he comes back in as soon as he can. But the determination, like you say, there wasn't any real bite in the tackle. You know, and this was a game that was huge to both teams. And I did expect a better performance from everybody. I thought there'd have been more desire and determination, like Jerry and Matt have just mentioned, you know, to get stuck into tackles. You know, we're giving little silly bookings away for silly tackles rather than going right through somebody. You know, I'd rather see a player, you know, not go and break anyone's leg or anything silly, but just, you know, in a game like this early on, let's get stuck in and show them that we mean it. And I didn't see it. We didn't lay that glove on anybody. We didn't against Newcastle until it was too late. And could have got a draw out of it with Vardy. Had 2 chances, but this today was very poor and worrying to the sense, to, you know, from looking outside looking in, that performance, like I say, there's clearly no leader which is needed in that presence. We've lost the Wes Morgans, the Schmeichels, and the whoever, you know, for Farners, but you can't expect Wout Fast to come in and start and be a leader just yet, because he's finding his feet from a new signing. Really, he shouldn't be the one that should be doing that. We've got Albrighton as captain, and I agree with that, because he's got something. He had a good game, I thought. Albrighton, when he was on, I thought he whipped some great balls in. No anticipation again. You know, no second balls that we were winning. You know, just reacting to. Thought we were pretty not unfit, but we looked, you know, didn't look sharp, and so it fluctuates. Sometimes we do, and we pass it quickly, and we do things right. So it's frustrating for a manager, for Brendan. He'll be thinking, God, look, you know, we've gone from this to this, and now we're struggling again. I've got to get that sharpness back in these players. I've got to get the understanding. There's certainly the games that we've played in sometimes, and we've set up, and you can clearly see they've worked on the shape, and they've got that set pattern of play, and we're very good then at breaking. But we look like we've got holes everywhere where we can be picked off at the minute, and that isn't a good feeling for anyone as a manager. And like I say, we've got a hard month coming up now. We've got some difficult games. This was key to everything this season. Now we're in a fight with 8 other teams. There's not, you know, there's 8 other teams that can go down, and that's fact. Everyone above that will be okay. There's no doubt in my mind. So this is where we have got to roll our sleeves up now, and we've got to get stuck into every game as though it's the last game of the season, and we're desperate to stay up. You know, I'm not saying we're going down, because I don't want to be negative. I want to take positives, but there wasn't too many positives. But from this, there's got to be a reaction now where they've got to roll the sleeves up. They've got to get stuck into games, and they've got to get the camaraderie together and that spirit, because it looked disjointed, and people would look down and out. So, you know, I didn't like that, and it's got to be looked at quickly. So Brendan's got a headache. But he's been there before. You know, we had a bad start to the season, and he certainly got us playing. So you've got to look at those games and think that we have got it in us, but we need the key man back, and that's we don't know what's going on.
What happens this week then, Jerry? Do you think at the training ground, what is said between the players, between the group? How is this turned around again? Because as Walshy's just said there, Leicester have been here already this season.
Yeah, it's difficult. Probably nothing that hasn't already been said, Dan. That's the issue. You know, probably after the Newcastle game, something might have been said. The players are like, yeah, okay. I think, you know, when you look at the injuries that Leicester have and the players that aren't available, I would say there's probably 3 or 4 key players who aren't playing at the minute. And obviously James Maddison is one of them. I put Keenan Dewsbury Hall is one as well, because of the way he drives the team forward. You could question whether Johnny Evans is a key player in regards to his management of a game of football and keeping everybody in check in front of him and around him. And, you know, words are good as a manager and as a coaching staff and as players if, you know, the result changes the following game. And at the minute, we're not saying that. So this is why it's so difficult to try and pinpoint. Maybe it needs a change of tactics. Walshy mentioned it, going a bit more direct in the game, trying to pick second balls up, a bit uglier. But we've also seen that in certain games. The second half against West Ham, we've seen it, where he went more direct, looked comfortable, kept a clean sheet, scored a goal later on. Whether or not Brendan will change tactically, who knows? I don't think so. I think that's his style. That's the way he plays. Me personally, I don't think we've got the personnel to play that style of football. But time will only tell. And also, as I just said, you got to give a chance to the players that are coming back. And then the other option you have, obviously, is the personnel situation. Does he, try and make wholesale changes, i.e. at the back? He's got a Turkish international, a Danish international, who don't seem to get a look in as far as, the two centre-halves are concerned. Iheanacho always seems to be on the bench. Is there, a shout for him to start more games? So there's your options. Words, as I said, we've all been in this situation, Dan. That's the problem. And you can have as many meetings as you want, but at the end of the day, the one thing that I think is really lacking, and the lads have already said it, is leadership on the pitch, game management, knowing how to manage certain situations while you're actually in game, not when the ball is there, but when the game is in full flow, and then taking responsibility to do your job. And we talked about duels, second balls, whatever. There was just a lack of leadership and a lack of leadership in that side of the game.
Yeah, there's a big week at the training ground, of course, coming up now for Leicester City. There's a huge game then next week. They're all pretty big now, aren't they? Brighton at home. That is another 3 o'clock kickoff. So you can join us for that from 2 p.m. Before that, of course, there's extra time on Monday evening to assess this defeat to Nottingham Forest. And you can listen to the new podcast with Steve Guppy, Leicester's the Place, Matt Elliott and Jerry Taggart in conversation with Steve Guppy. Walsh, I'm sure you'd enjoy listening to that one as well.
I will do, yeah.
Thank you very much to Matt, who travelled, of course, to the City Ground today. Cheers to Walshy for coming in. Thanks again to Jerry, as ever. On a really bitterly disappointing afternoon for the Foxes.
Keep the faith, everyone.